We're doing it live! Right here on Facebook. What up, everybody? It's 8 o'clock. It's Facebook Live. And we're here to read Chapter 21 of Book 5 in the Oz series. The book is called The Road to Oz. And tonight's chapter is called Dorothy Receives the Guests. Last night we got to the point where, hi Munchkin, we got my tiniest Munchkin here. There's another Munchkin over here in this.
I'm gonna get a drink.
That's funny. He goes, I'm gonna use the bathroom. I'm gonna get a drink so the camera can hear me. It's okay, man. Everybody got to pee sometimes. It happens. I got another Munchkin over here. The oldest Munchkin, the biggest Munchkin. You can see her hand. Oh, there's her head. Hi. We are going to read Chapter 21, Dorothy Receives the Guests. When we left off, everybody had gotten to the Emerald City. Well, all of our friends had gotten to the Emerald City and had a nice dinner with Ozma, and she'd met everybody, and it was all like everybody was happy. And now, Dorothy is going to receive the guests to Ozma's birthday party. Next morning, Dorothy's breakfast was served in her own pretty sitting room, and she sent to invite Polly and the Shaggy Man to join her and Button-Bright at the meal. They came gladly, and Toto also had breakfast with them, so that the little party that had traveled together to Oz was once more reunited. No sooner had they finished eating than they heard the distant blasts of many trumpets, and the sound of a brass band playing martial music, so they all went out upon the balcony. This was at the front of the palace and overlooked the streets of the city, being higher than the wall that shut in the palace grounds. They saw approaching down the street a band of musicians, playing as hard and loud as they could, while the people of the Emerald City crowded the sidewalks and cheered so lustily that they almost drowned the noise of the drums and horns. Dorothy looked to see what they were cheering at, and discovered that behind the band was the famous Scarecrow, riding proudly upon the back of a wooden sawhorse, which pranced along the street almost as gracefully as if it had been made of flesh. Its hooves, or rather the ends of its wooden legs, were shod with plates of solid gold, and the saddle strapped to the wooden body was richly embroidered and glistened with jewels. As he reached the palace, the Scarecrow looked up and saw Dorothy, and at once waved his peaked hat at her in greeting. He rode up to the front door and dismounted, and the band stopped playing and went away, and the crowds of people returned to their dwellings. By this time, Dorothy and her friends had re-entered her room. The Scarecrow was there, and he gave the girl a hearty embrace and shook the hands of the others with his own squashy hands, which were white gloves filled with straw. The Shaggy Man, Button-Bright, and Polychrome stared hard at this celebrated person, who was acknowledged to be the most popular and most beloved man in all the land of Oz. "Why, you've had your face newly painted!" exclaimed Dorothy when the first greetings were over. "I had it touched up a bit by the Munchkin farmer who first made me," answered the Scarecrow pleasantly. "My complexion had become a bit gray and faded, and the paint had peeled off one end of my mouth, so I couldn't quite talk straight. Now I feel like myself again, and I may say without immodesty, my body is stuffed with the loveliest oat straw in all of Oz." He pushed against his chest. "Hear me, Crunkle?" he said. "Yes," said Dorothy, "you sound fine." Button-Bright was wonderfully attracted by the straw man, and so was Polly. The Shaggy Man greeted him with great respect because he was so queerly made. Jellia Jam now came to say that Ozma wanted Princess Dorothy to receive the invited guests in the throne room as they arrived. The ruler was, herself, busy ordering the preparations for the morrow's festivities, so she wished her friend to act in her place. Dorothy willingly agreed, being the only other princess in the Emerald City. So she went to the great throne room and sat in Ozma's seat, placing Polly on one side of her and Button-Bright on the other. The Scarecrow stood at the left of the throne, and the Tin Woodman at the right, while the wonderful Wizard and the Shaggy Man stood behind. The Cowardly Lion and the Hungry Tiger came in, with bright new bows of ribbon on their collars and tails. After greeting Dorothy affectionately, the huge beasts lay down at the foot of the throne. While they waited, the Scarecrow, who was near the little boy, asked, "Why are you called Button-Bright?" "Don't know," was the answer. "Oh, yes, you do, dear," said Dorothy. "Tell the Scarecrow how you got your name." "Papa always said I was bright as a button, so Mama always called me Button-Bright," announced the boy. "Where's your Mama?" asked the Scarecrow. "Don't know," said Button-Bright. "Where's your home?" said the Scarecrow. "Don't know." "Well, don't you want to find your Mama again?" asked the Scarecrow. "Don't know," said Button-Bright calmly. The Scarecrow looked thoughtful. "Your papa might have been right," he observed, "but there are many kinds of buttons, you see. There are silver and gold buttons, which are highly polished and glitter brightly. There are pearl and rubber buttons and other kinds with surfaces more or less bright. There's still another sort of button which is covered with dull cloth, and that must be the sort your papa meant when he said you were bright as a button. Don't you think so?" "Don't know," said Button-Bright. Jack Pumpkinhead arrived wearing a pair of new white kid gloves, and he brought a birthday present for Ozma consisting of a necklace of pumpkin seeds. In each seed was set a sparkling carolite, which is considered the rarest and most beautiful gem that exists. The necklace was in a plush case, and Jellia Jam put it on a table with Princess Ozma's other presents. Next came a tall, beautiful woman clothed in a splendid trailing gown, trimmed with exquisite lace as fine as cobweb. This was the important sorceress known as Glinda the Good, who had been of great assistance to both Ozma and Dorothy. There was no humbug about her magic, as you may be sure, and Glinda was as kind as she was powerful. She greeted Dorothy most lovingly, and kissed Button-Bright and Polly, and smiled upon the Shaggy Man, after which Jellia Jam led the Scarecrow to one of the most magnificent rooms of the royal palace, and appointed 50 servants to wait upon her. She led the sorceress there, not the Scarecrow. I'm sorry. My brain today. The next arrival was Mr. H.M. Wogglebug T.E., the H.M. meaning highly magnified, and the T.E. meaning thoroughly educated. The Wogglebug was head professor at the Royal College of Oz, and he had composed a fine ode in honor of Ozma's birthday. This he wanted to read to them, but the Scarecrow wouldn't let him. Soon they heard a clucking sound and a chorus of "cheep, cheep," and a servant threw open the door to allow Billina and her 10 fluffy chicks to enter the throne room. As the yellow hen marched proudly at the head of her family, Dorothy cried, "Oh, you lovely things!" and ran down from her seat to pet the yellow downy balls. Billina wore a pearl necklace, and around the neck of each chicken was a tiny gold chain holding a locket with the letter D engraved upon the outside. "Open the lockets, Dorothy," said Billina. The girl obeyed and found a picture of herself in each locket. "They were named after you, my dear," continued the yellow hen, "so I wanted all my chickens to wear your picture. Cluck, cluck! Come here, Dorothy, this minute," she cried, for the chickens were scattered and wandering around the big room. They obeyed the call at once, and came running as fast as they could, fluttering their fluffy wings in a laughable way. It was lucky that Billina gathered the little ones under her soft breast just then, for Tik-Tok came in and tramped up to the throne on his flat copper feet. "I am all wound up and working finely," said the Clockwork Man to Dorothy. "You can hear him tick," declared Button-Bright. "You are quite the polished gentleman," said the Tin Woodman. "Stand up here beside the Shaggy Man, Tik-Tok, and help receive the company." Dorothy placed soft cushions in a corner for Billina and her chicks, and had just returned to the throne and seated herself when the playing of the royal band outside the palace announced the approach of distinguished guests. And my, how they did stare when the High Chamberlain threw open the doors and the visitors entered the throne room. First walked a gingerbread man, neatly formed and baked to a lovely brown tint. He wore a silk hat and carried a candy cane prettily striped with red and yellow. His shirt front and cuffs were white frosting. The bottoms of his coat were licorice drops. Behind the gingerbread man came a child with flaxen hair and merry blue eyes, dressed in white pajamas with sandals on the soles of its pretty bare feet. The child looked around smiling and thrust its hands into the pockets of the pajamas. Close after it came a big rubber bear walking erect on its hind feet. The bear had twinkling black eyes, and its body looked as if it had been pumped full of air. Following these curious visitors were 2 tall, thin men and 2 short, fat men, all 4 dressed in gorgeous uniforms. Ozma's High Chamberlain now hurried forward to announce the names of the new arrivals, calling out in a loud voice, "His Gracious and Most Edible Majesty, King Dough the First, ruler of the 2 kingdoms of Highland and Lowland. Also the head bullywag of His Majesty, known as Chick the Cherub, and their faithful friend, Para Bruin, the Rubber Bear." These great personages bowed low as their names were called, and Dorothy hastened to introduce them to the assembled company. They were the first foreign arrivals, and the friends of Princess Ozma were polite to them and tried to make them feel that they were welcome. Chick the Cherub shook hands with everyone, including Billina, and was so joyous and frank and full of good spirits that John Dough's head bullywag had at once become a prime favorite. "Is it a boy or a girl?" whispered Dorothy. "Don't know," said Button-Bright. "Goodness me, what a queer lot of people you are!" exclaimed the Rubber Bear, looking at the assembled company. "So are you," said Button-Bright gravely. "Is King Dough good to eat?" "He's too good to eat," laughed Chick the Cherub. "I do hope none of you are fond of gingerbread," said the king rather anxiously. "Oh, we should never think of eating our visitors if we were," declared the Scarecrow. "So please do not worry, for you will be perfectly safe while you remain in Oz." "Why they call you Chick?" asked the yellow hen, or the yellow hen asked the child. "Because I'm an incubator baby and never had any parents," replied the head bullywag. "My chicks have a parent, and I'm it," said Billina. "I'm glad of that," answered the cherub, "because they'll have more fun worrying you than if they were brought up in an incubator. Incubator never worries, you know." King John Dough had brought for Ozma's birthday present a lovely gingerbread crown with rows of small pearls around it and a big fine pearl in each of its 5 points. After this had been received by Dorothy with proper thanks and placed on the table with the other presents, the visitors from Highland and Lowland were escorted to their rooms by the High Chamberlain. They had no sooner departed than the band before the palace began to play again, announcing more arrivals, and as these were doubtless from foreign parts, the High Chamberlain hurried back to receive them in his most official manner. And that is the end of Chapter 21, Dorothy Receives the Guests. Chapter 22 will be tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Facebook Live. It's called Important Arrivals. We're almost to the end of Book 5 of the Oz series. And on Tuesday, I believe it'll be, we'll start Book 6 of the Oz series, which is called The Emerald City of Oz.
So weird thinking that we're already on Book 5 and we're about to go to Book 6. It's almost like thinking about the fact that 2020 is almost over.
Annabelle's excited that we're already almost done with Book 5 and ready for Book 6, and she's like, it's almost like 2020 is almost over. And I'm like, oh, 2020 can't end soon enough. It's been a long one. But I'm glad you've all been able to join us. Feel free to leave a like or a comment or whatever. Let me know you're enjoying the series. I had somebody I work with today tell me that she'd been listening in on her kid's Zoom call, and her kid's like elementary school aged, and the teacher was reading a story, and she goes, "Man, that teacher needs to take lessons from you." And I was like, "Oh, you've seen me read?" She goes, "I stalked your Facebook page." And I thought that was funny. And I was like, you should have left a like or a comment or something, just said hi, because that's awesome. I like that people watch these. That's fun to me. So I hope you watch. I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you join us again tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Facebook Live for Chapter 22. Yay. Thanks, everyone. Good night.